Great to have you along for the ride. Thanks a lot for stopping by. Glad to have this man back. District 13 Republican, great state of Texas, my state. It is Dr. Representative Ronny Jackson. How are you, Ronny? Good to see you.
Hey, I'm doing fine, Joe. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Since you were the White House doctor, did you remain the doctor for President Trump or not?
I did.
Like, are you
I was a
still?
physician. No, I'm not. I don't practice medicine anymore. No, so I'm a full time member of Congress now. So I don't practice medicine. But no, I was a physician for Bush, Obama, and Trump. And then when I resigned from the Navy and retired from the military, or resigned from the White House, retired from the military in December of 2019. I could no longer practice medicine in the state of Virginia with my Florida license, which is what I
Okay.
had at the time. Because you're in the military, you can have a license in any state, but when you're civilian, you have to have a license in the state you practice in. And I moved back to Texas, so
And you're representing a great district here in this great state, and I appreciate you for that. We all watched what happened on January 13th. It was disgusting. I hope we get to the bottom of it. I cannot believe the perfect storm of mistakes that allowed this to happen. I don't think they were mistakes. I think there might be something more nefarious, but that's my opinion. I'm not going to put that on you. But I know that you're close with President Trump, and you did his physical exams while he was the president. And you were a great person to make sure that he was healthy, and you answered all the questions and everything else. When this goes down, he survives, thank God, got shot in the ear. How soon do they call you, and when do you decide, I better go and see what's going on? Because you got on a plane very quickly, right? This video is sponsored by Private Internet Access. If you're not familiar with a VPN, listen up. This is really important. Your ISP, your internet service provider, can see every website you go to, can see where you're browsing, what movies you're watching, who you're communicating with, and they get to keep all that stuff. And later, the government can ask them about it. So instead of even dealing with that, you've got to get a VPN. I use Private Internet Access, PIA, and I want you to do so as well. It connects very, very quickly. It completely cloaks where you are, who you are, what you're doing. If you want to go on Netflix and you see some movie that's blocked in your region, you can change the region. You can actually do this with just a press of a simple button. It doesn't feel like you've done anything, and the speeds are lightning fast. Click on the link in the description. Go there right now and get yourself private internet access. It's cheap, it's easy, it'll keep you protected. And you ever go to like McDonald's or to maybe a Starbucks or something, and you sit down to use their internet, you press this button, it still keeps you safe from everybody else who's on that internet. Go right now, check out private internet access. You'll be glad you did. Now back to the video.
I did. And I'm not only did I just do the president's physicals, but when I was at the White House for 14 years, and certainly when I was appointed physician to the president for President Trump, I went everywhere he went, and probably around 75, 80% of my job was contingency planning on what to do if the president takes a round to the chest, or if
Wow.
an IED hits a motorcade, or if he has a stroke or a heart attack. That was the main gist of my job, was planning for the bad day. And I was in Texas when it happened. Obviously, they were in Pennsylvania, and I had an overwhelming sense of helplessness, more than I've ever felt in my life, being here in Texas when that happened. And so I was absolutely anxious to just get to to where they were at, like, immediately. Of course, I was limited in what I could do because I was in Texas.
Right.
So I immediately called and told them I'm on my way. They said, that's good. Get here as fast as you can. And I got on the first plane out. I flew straight to New Jersey. I got to Bedminster at about 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning that night. And I was there, the rest of that night, all day the next day. Flew to the Republican convention in Milwaukee with him on his plane on Trump Force One on that following day.
Right.
And then basically kind of fell into my old role where I was just at his side 24/7 for the next 9 days. And I just basically went everywhere he went, and traveled with him, and went to his following rally, and went back to Palm Beach with him, and then broke away finally on that Monday, weekend, a little over a week later, and went back to Congress, back to DC.
Well, I hadn't thought about how much you traveled with him as president, also with Obama, also with Bush. But I
Yeah.
know that you're uniquely qualified and trained. This is the president of the United States. It's your job to keep that person alive and well. So that makes perfect sense that you got on the plane and you went there. There are probably very, very few people in this country or even on the planet that are trained specifically for that role like you are, right?
Well, that's true. I mean, there are very few of us that have done this job. And obviously, I had a lot of training that got me to where I'm at. I was an emergency medicine physician. I was a combat physician in Iraq with the Marines. I spent almost a year on the battlefield between Fallujah and Ramadi,
Mm.
where I saw gunshot wounds and IEDs
Well, that's
and
a rough
people
area.
with their limbs blown
Fallujah
off.
was rough.
I saw this stuff every day. And so I think, I'm clinically trained to do that. And, obviously the president wasn't, critically injured
Right.
as badly as he could have been. Thank God. Right. If it would have been a millimeter closer to his head, it would have been a devastating, it would have been over. It would have been not consistent with, with life. It would have killed him.
Wow.
But, it took the top of his ear off, but I still wanted to be there because, I know how the press is and everything else. And part of the reason I wanted to go was to look at his injury and make sure he was okay and make sure everything that needed to be done was done, and they did a lot of stuff. They did a good job at the Butler Memorial Hospital where they took care of him. They did a CAT scan and they looked him over from head to toe, looking for other injuries because you can sometimes miss these injuries, in a high powered rifle like that with a round that's moving at a supersonic speed like that can cause damage to tissues around it, not just the area where it hits. And so I wanted to make sure that he was okay, but I also wanted to be there to manage the press and to talk to the press about what was going on. And I felt like I'm uniquely qualified to do that as well.
You certainly are. It's Representative Ronny Jackson. He's a doctor, of course, Republican, great state of Texas. So immediately the media started lying. I want to clear something up very quickly. You did have a relative there, right? Almost immediately we started hearing Ronny Jackson has a nephew or a son or somebody who's there, and that person was injured. How was that person? Who was there? And I don't need any names, but what was the relative?
It was my nephew.
Okay.
It was my nephew. He's doing fine. Yeah, they were there. They'd never been to a Trump rally before, and so they lived nearby. So I got them tickets to go, and they put them in the friends and family section there. And unfortunately, that was where a lot of the bullets landed. As a matter of fact, the gentleman that was shot in the head, the firefighter that was tragically killed, was just a few rows behind where they were sitting. There were a few rows in front of him. And so at some point or another, he got hit by a bullet or a piece of a bullet, or he got hit by something that fragmented from where the bullets were hitting, but something cut his neck. And so a gentleman that was in there that he didn't really know saw him bleeding and took him to the triage, to the medical tent, and he was evaluated there. And it turns out his injury was not serious, which is good. We're thankful of that. But the unfortunate thing is the gentleman that was shot in the head was also in the tent with him, and I think the trauma of being in there in that setting was probably the bigger deal.
It is Representative Ronny Jackson, District 13 Republican, great state of Texas, jackson.house.gov. We appreciate the time and the access. Almost immediately, the media started lying. CNN wrote a headline saying Trump falls at rally, Secret Service helps him out. Another one said Trump runs off the stage because of popping noises at a rally. Almost immediately, once we found out that he was in fact injured, it hit the teleprompter and plexiglass hurt his ear. And then we had Ray, this idiot who's the director of the FBI, sitting the other day in front of Congress saying, we're not sure. It could have been shrapnel, could have been a bullet. He's acting like he wasn't sure. Almost immediately, the FBI started walking that back. You're the doctor. You know a gunshot wound when you see it. Was he shot or not?
He was absolutely shot. I mean, the bullet took the top of his ear, shot off part of the top of his ear, and it went down to the cartilage. It didn't get into the cartilage, so the architecture of his ear is okay. But all of the skin and the fat that's naturally over the top of the ear was gone. It was scooped out in the perfect shape of a bullet that passed through. Wow. There was all kinds of trauma to the tissue around it, which was inconsistent with a high velocity round like that. There was a lot of swelling and edema. The entire top of his ear was completely swollen. It looked like a cauliflower ear of a wrestler initially. So those are all hallmark signs of a gunshot wound from a high-powered rifle. And, for someone to say something differently is completely just absurd and ridiculous. And you have these idiots, these morons like Joy Reid and Keith Olbermann, yes. Saying that he wasn't shot. I mean, what a bunch of morons. The entire world witnessed this happen in real time. I mean, everyone saw it. I mean, he rose up and they were zoomed in on his ear. You could see his ear. You could see the injury to his ear. You could see the blood everywhere. And for the FBI director to make some comment like that is completely inappropriate. And I wrote a couple of letters. I wrote one letter while I was still with the president during the time that I was taking care of him, just kind of giving the American people an update on his injury. And then I wrote a follow-on letter the other day after the FBI director had said that to kind of give an update on the president's condition, but to also call out the FBI director and say that was absolutely inappropriate. And I'll tell you the reason it happened, Joe, is because the establishment, and unfortunately, I put the DC establishment, I put the FBI director into that category of the DC establishment. They are absolutely terrified now They understand that Trump is going to win this election. And this basically made him a hero to so many people. When he stood up after being shot in the head and he was covered in blood and he shook his fist in defiance and angrily said, fight, fight, fight. There are thousands and thousands of people all over this country that had no intention of voting for Donald Trump that looked at that man and said, that man is a warrior, he's a leader, and he's got my vote. And it's scaring the crap out of the left, rightfully so.
It is.
But look, so they're doing everything they can to try to push this story down. You saw that this pathetic that Google, you can get on Google right now and you can Google assassination attempt and you can't even find anything on the initial pages regarding President Trump. How absurd is that, right?
Yeah.
But the entire left, the entire liberal media and the mainstream media and the left wing, they're doing everything they can now to bring this story down, to bury this story, to try to change the narrative, and to start propping up this disaster that we now have as a nominee on the Democrat side, Kamala Harris. But it's not going to work. I mean, the people saw what they saw.
Well, it's anti-democracy. They keep on talking about a threat to democracy. When you take the democratic way we vote in this country away from 14.5 million people that voted for Joe Biden and say we're just gonna hand it to somebody, that's a monarchy. That is not a democracy. That's not a representative republic. It's none of those things, and that's what they're trying to do. Now, Ronnie, when you were on my show probably 2 years ago, I asked you what's going on with Joe Biden because you were observing him from afar. You've never been his doctor specifically, but you said on my show, I think it's age-related dementia. And we've seen him go downhill so much more in the past 2 years that it's not even an issue anymore. If you've got a brain, you know. And if you say you didn't know about this, you're lying. But they still can't just remove him because he can't win, which is what they're doing. Did they need to, and your opinion as a doctor, if you don't mind, did they need to tell the American public he can't continue doing this job? He doesn't have the capacity. Because he didn't say, when he came out and did that speech, he never admitted why he's not running, just that it's time to turn the torch over or something stupid. What do you take out of the situation we're seeing with this guy clearly doesn't have the capability to continue, but they're not admitting that?
Well, they don't want to admit it, and they won't admit it, and they won't say it because, Joe, if they admit that, then they have to admit that he can't be president right now.
Yes.
If they admit that he's too cognitively impaired to be their nominee, they can't turn around and make the argument that he's fine to be president from now until January 20 of next year. So they can't, under no circumstances can they say that. They have to come up with any reason they can think of, but not that. And, you're right. I was saying this as early as 2019 when he was candidate Joe Biden. I was saying to the American people that this guy should not be the candidate for president. He's not cognitively fit to be the commander in chief and the head of state. And I also said that it will get worse with time. It will not get better. The natural course of all of these diseases, regardless of what they are, that involve cognitive issues and these movement disorders, and there's a variety of them, and they're all bad, and they all get worse with time. I said that this man will eventually be removed by the Democrats because there will come a point where even they cannot cover up his incompetence and his cognitive impairment. And that's exactly what happened. They got to the point, and it was showcased at the debate. And after the debate, they could no longer deny it. And they all came out acting like, oh, my God, we didn't know. They all knew, most especially Jill Biden knew. And like I've said before, that woman wanted to be first lady more than she wanted her next breath. And she would do anything to keep that job. His physician, Dr. Kevin O'Connor, who I know well, knew what was going on and should have said something. His chief of staff, his senior staff, all those around him that supposedly love him and care about him should have never put him in this position to start with. And once this was obvious, they should have figured out a way to get him out of this. They did not.
Ronnie,
now they're in the situation they're in.
Can he make it 6 more months? Medically speaking,
I don't know
as a doctor?
Think he can. I mean, I think their strategy is going to be to try to keep him off the camera as much as possible. I mean, just, to go underground again, put him back in the basement. And because if they get him out in front of the American people, he is going to continue to say crazy stuff and declare that he's not there. And at some point, they're going to have to come to the realization that and you know what's going to happen, Joe, when this is going to, I think the fastest way for him to be removed via the 25th Amendment, whether he voluntarily leaves per the 25th Amendment or he's removed by the vice president and his cabinet via the 25th Amendment, is what is really likely, I think a high probability from this point forward, is that we have a major terrorist attack in this country. Our southern border has been open for 3.5 years now. We have had hundreds and hundreds of ISIS and Al-Qaeda terrorists cross into this country. They are here. They have cells set up. something is going to happen. And if it happens between now and January 20th, this man is not going to be in a position to deal with it. And I think that's when the whole country will look at his party and say, he has to go now.
Yeah. Well, without a doubt, I hope that doesn't happen, but it's certainly a probability because we've got so many illegal aliens in the country now. We have no idea who they are. They're not vetted. We've caught 300 or so that we know are on the terrorist watch list. How many didn't we catch? And I think that's your point exactly.
Right.
It's Ronny Jackson. He's a U.S. Representative, District 13, Republican, great state of Texas. When it comes to him not being able to do the job for 6 more months, let's go back to what I said initially. You can't just say, I can't win, so I'm dropping out. You've already had the primaries. Either redo the primaries and give Democrats a chance to select who they want, or you're stuck with Joe Biden. So, Ronny, how legally do they get around him being the presumptive nominee? How do they legally? Some states say the delegates have to go to the person who won the most votes. Kamala Harris was not on the ballot. So how do they do this?
I don't know. I don't know how they get away with this. I think that they're destined to have legal challenges on this, no matter what they do here. I think that if the shoe were on the other foot, and this were the Republicans doing this, they would be absolutely losing their minds right now. I mean, that would be all you hear about on TV, on MSNBC and CNN and ABC and NBC and CBS. They wouldn't talk about anything but the fact that the Republicans are trying to steal democracy from the American people.
Right.
And that's exactly what the Democrats are doing right now. I hope they don't get away with it. I want him to continue to be the nominee because that's who they chose. That's who we were running against up until this point. It's almost time to have the election now. And we're going to win either way. But if Joe Biden is the nominee, this is already over.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's Ronny Jackson. He's a doctor. He's also U.S. Representative, District 13 Republican, great state of Texas. As we're watching all of this unfold, I don't trust, and I wonder if you agree with me, the DOJ under Joe Biden. Under this administration, I don't think we're going to get the real answer to what happened on July 13th. I think it's going to take until a new administration comes in. Do you agree, or do you think that you guys in Congress can get some answers?
No, I think that there will be no answers to what happened until after there's a new administration. If Trump gets back in and we get a new DOJ, if we have the House and we have the Senate, we will absolutely get all the details about what happened, and we'll find out what happened. I think my Republican counterparts that are on this new committee that's looking into this, that Speaker Johnson just appointed, which I'm proud he did, I think that they'll gather a lot of the preliminary information, and it'll probably be a lot like the COVID investigations. We'll probably know what happened. We just won't get the left to admit it, and we won't be able to get some of the stuff that we need to prove it. But we will eventually get that stuff in the new administration, and we will know what happened. And I think that it's going to be pretty devastating because you made the comment at the beginning. I'm not trying to be the conspiracy person here, and I'm not saying that this was intentional, but I do think that a lot of people in the Secret Service and in the DOJ and in the FBI and they just looked the other way and kind of said, "Who cares? It's Trump. Like, who cares what happens to Trump?"
That's a scary place to be in this country. Ronny, I'm so glad that you're on our side. It's Dr. Ronny Jackson, of course, the former White House doctor, also U.S. Representative, District 13, great state of Texas, my state. Thanks so much for your friendship and keep on working hard for us in Washington. Thank you, Ronny.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me.
All right, brother. We're back after this. Stay right here.